Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. It was supposed to be just another day in the life of a happily married man. I woke up to the sound of my kids arguing over who got the last waffle, Claire humming a tune as she brushed her hair, and the usual chaos that came with a busy household. Claire, my wife of 12 years, looked radiant that morning. Her blonde hair shone in the morning sunlight, and she wore the confidence of someone who had life all figured out. I loved her, or at least the version of her I thought I knew. She kissed me on the cheek as she left for work. "See you tonight," she said, her perfume lingering in the air as the door clicked shut behind her. I turned back to my coffee and the pile of mail on the counter, ready to tackle another day of juggling work and family life. That's when I noticed it, a credit card bill from our joint account. Normally, I wouldn't have paid much attention. Claire handled most of the household finances, and I trusted her implicitly. But this envelope caught my eye because of a specific line item, $3,000 spent at a jewelry store I didn't recognize. I frowned. Claire wasn't the type to splurge without a reason, and certainly not on something as extravagant as jewelry. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe she'd bought a gift for her sister or was planning a surprise for me. But a nagging feeling tugged at the back of my mind. Something about it didn't sit right. I decided to let it go for the moment. The kids needed to get to school, and I had a full slate of meetings. But that charge stayed with me all day, buzzing like an annoying mosquito I couldn't swat away. By the time Claire got home that evening, I had replayed every possible explanation in my mind, none of which fully satisfied my growing suspicion. "How was work?" I asked her as casually as I could while she poured herself a glass of wine. "Busy," she said, flashing me a smile. "Same old grind." I watched her, searching for cracks in her expression, some giveaway that she was hiding something. But Claire was as composed as ever, her laughter ringing through the kitchen as she joked with the kids. I felt a pang of guilt for doubting her. This was Claire, my Claire. She wouldn't lie to me. Would she? That night, as she slept soundly beside me, I found myself wide awake, staring at the ceiling. My gut told me something was off, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. Quietly, I slipped out of bed and tiptoed to her laptop in the study. Claire wasn't one for strong passwords, I guessed hers on the third try. What I found hit me like a punch to the stomach. Her email account revealed a chain of correspondence with someone named D. The email started off innocently enough, work-related, professional. But as I scrolled further back, they grew more intimate. There were jokes, pet names, and references to inside moments I wasn't part of. My hands trembled as I read phrases like, "Last night was amazing," and "Can't wait to see you again." It didn't take long to piece it together. Derek. That was his name. He was a coworker of hers, someone she'd mentioned casually in passing but never lingered on. The emails painted a clear picture, business trips that weren't really about business, late nights at work, and secret rendezvous while I stayed home with the kids. I felt sick. My chest tightened as I stared at the screen, the words blurring in front of me. This couldn't be real. Claire wouldn't do this to me, to us. But there it was, undeniable and damning. I almost confronted her then and there, my anger bubbling to the surface. But something stopped me. I needed to be smart about this. If I flew off the handle, I risked giving her time to spin her lies or destroy evidence. No, I needed a plan. For the next few days, I acted as though everything was normal. I kissed her goodbye in the mornings, laughed at her stories during dinner, and tucked our kids into bed like I always did. But inside, I was unraveling. Every glance she gave me felt like a dagger. Every smile was a mockery of the life I thought we had. During the day, I began my investigation. I installed a tracker on her car and synced her texts to my phone. I pored over bank statements, searching for more discrepancies. And I found them, hotel reservations, dinners at upscale restaurants, little charges here and there that added up to a mountain of betrayal. By the end of the week, I had everything I needed. I knew where they met, how long it had been going on, and even the lies she'd told to cover her tracks. Each piece of evidence was a dagger to my heart, but it also fueled my resolve. This wasn't going to end with me as the victim. I was going to take back control. As I looked at the mountain of evidence in front of me, a plan began to take shape. It wasn't enough to simply confront her. She needed to feel the weight of her actions. She needed to understand what it felt like to be blindsided, to have her world come crashing down. Revenge wasn't just an option, it was a necessity. And I was going to execute it with precision. The days that followed were a blur of calculated moves and quiet rage. Claire went about her life as though nothing had changed, oblivious to the storm brewing under the surface. Each morning, she kissed me goodbye with that same warm smile, and each night, she returned home with rehearsed stories about her day. If I didn't know better, I might have believed her. But I did know better. The tracker I installed on her car yielded results within days. Her usual route to work didn't deviate, until Thursday. Instead of heading home after her late meeting, she drove to a boutique hotel downtown. I parked a block away and watched as she strolled into the lobby, her stride confident and casual. Less than 15 minutes later, Derek arrived, his hand grazing her back as they entered the elevator together. I stayed in my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the ease with which she carried it out, as though this was just another routine part of her life. But that was fine. Let her think she was in control. It would make my revenge all the sweeter. Back home, I sifted through the text messages synced to my phone. They painted a picture that was both nauseating and enraging. Derek wasn't just some fleeting affair, he was a regular fixture in her life. Their conversations were a mix of lust and shared jokes, sprinkled with the kind of emotional intimacy I thought was reserved for our marriage. "Can't wait to see you tonight," one of his messages read. "Room 305, same as last time. I'll bring wine." Her reply was equally casual, "Perfect. I'll leave the office around 7. Miss you." I set my phone down, my jaw tightening. They were bold, but their boldness would be their undoing. The next day, while Claire was at work, I began gathering tangible evidence. Photos, screenshots of her texts, hotel reservations, everything I could find that corroborated her deceit. I even went through the house, searching for anything that might connect her to Derek. It didn't take long to find the necklace. Hidden in the back of her jewelry box, nestled in a velvet case, was a pendant I'd never seen before. It was elegant, understated, and entirely out of place. I remembered the $3,000 charge on the credit card and realized this must have been Derek's gift to her, or worse, her purchase for him. Either way, it was another piece of the puzzle, another nail in the coffin of our marriage. By the weekend, I had enough evidence to make my move. But I wasn't ready to confront her yet. That would be too easy. Claire needed to experience the same level of betrayal and confusion that she had inflicted on me. She needed to feel the weight of her lies crumble around her. I started with the bank accounts. Over the years, we'd saved a decent sum in our joint savings account, money earmarked for vacations, the kids' college funds, and emergencies. Quietly, I transferred every penny into an account in my name. It wasn't theft, it was preparation. Claire wouldn't see it coming, and by the time she did, it would be too late. Next, I called a real estate agent to begin the process of listing the house. Claire adored our home. She had spent countless hours decorating every room, curating a space she took immense pride in. But the house was in my name, a small detail she had overlooked when we purchased it. "Are you sure about this?" the agent asked when I explained the urgency. "Absolutely," I replied, my voice steady. "I want everything in place by the end of the month." My final step was the lawyer. Jennifer Pratt came highly recommended, known for her ruthless efficiency and no-nonsense approach to cases like mine. When I laid out the evidence of Claire's infidelity, she nodded with a grim smile. "This is airtight," she said, flipping through the photos and emails. "She won't have much of a leg to stand on in court." "That's what I'm counting on," I replied. Jennifer assured me that the divorce papers would be ready within the week. In the meantime, I focused on maintaining the facade of normalcy at home. Claire had no idea what was coming, and I intended to keep it that way. On Sunday evening, as we sat down for dinner, Claire seemed more relaxed than usual. She poured herself a glass of wine, her laughter filling the kitchen as she recounted a story about her boss. I watched her, marveling at how effortlessly she could lie, how she could sit across from me and pretend our life together was anything but a sham. "Everything okay?" she asked, noticing my silence. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Just tired. Long week." She nodded, oblivious. "I hear you. Work's been crazy for me too." I wondered what Derek's version of crazy was, but I kept my thoughts to myself. There would be plenty of time for that later. As the kids went to bed and Claire retreated to the couch with a book, I found myself standing in the kitchen, staring out the window. The gears of my plan were in motion, and there was no turning back now. Claire thought she had won, that her secret was safe. But by the time I was finished, she would understand the true cost of her betrayal. I had given her my love, my trust, my loyalty. She had repaid me with deceit. Now it was her turn to pay. And I was going to make sure she felt every ounce of the pain she had inflicted on me. Monday morning arrived with an eerie calmness, the kind that precedes a storm. Claire left for work as usual, kissing me on the cheek and wishing me a good day. She even smiled as she walked out the door, her bag slung over her shoulder, carrying more secrets than I could stomach. What she didn't know was that today would be the last day she walked out of this house as my wife. I spent the morning finalizing the details of my plan. Jennifer had overnight the divorce papers, and I'd already signed them. All I needed now was Claire's signature to seal her fate. The house listing was live, and our savings were safely tucked away in my private account. The kids were at school, blissfully unaware of the cracks forming in their world. I wanted to shield them from as much of this as possible, but I knew that wasn't entirely in my control. By lunchtime, I was parked a block away from Claire's office. I watched the entrance like a hawk, waiting for her to emerge. Around 12:30, she stepped out, her phone pressed to her ear, her laughter cutting through the hum of city traffic. She was meeting him, Derek. I knew because her text messages had told me so. I followed her at a safe distance, my heart pounding in my chest. She led me to a nearby cafe, a cozy little spot tucked away from the main road. Derek was already there, sitting at a corner table, his posture relaxed, his smile wide. Claire greeted him with a kiss, not on the cheek, but on the lips. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to keep watching, to record every second of this betrayal with the small camera hidden in my jacket pocket. They chatted, laughed, and shared inside jokes, completely unaware of the lens trained on them. It was surreal, watching my wife with another man, her gestures so intimate, her expressions so carefree. The woman I saw before me wasn't the woman I had married. She was a stranger. When they left the cafe, I let them go. I had what I needed. The video, combined with the emails, texts, and receipts, would be more than enough to prove her infidelity. Now, it was time to bring the curtain down on her little performance. I waited until Claire returned home that evening. She walked in, her smile as radiant as ever, carrying a bouquet of flowers Derek had given her. My stomach twisted at the sight, but I kept my face neutral. "Hey," she said, setting the flowers on the counter. "How was your day?" "Interesting," I replied, leaning against the kitchen island. "We need to talk." Claire froze for a split second, her fingers brushing the petals of a rose. "About what?" About Derek, I said, my voice steady but sharp. Her hand dropped to her side, and she turned to face me. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and played the video. Her face paled as she watched herself kiss him, laugh with him, touch his arm as though it were the most natural thing in the world. When the video ended, I looked up, meeting her wide-eyed gaze. Explain this, I demanded. I can't believe you were spying on me, she said, her voice trembling with anger. You're deflecting, I shot back. I caught you, Claire. I have the texts, the emails, the hotel receipts. I know everything. She sank into a chair, her head in her hands. It's not what you think, she whispered. Oh, it's exactly what I think, I said. You've been cheating on me. Lying to me. Making a mockery of our marriage. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing, no sympathy, no sadness, just a cold, burning anger. How long? I asked. 6 months, she admitted, her voice barely audible. It was a mistake. A mistake. I scoffed. You don't accidentally carry on a 6-month affair, Claire. You planned this. You lied to me, to the kids. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, her tears falling harder now. But you did, I snapped. And now you're going to face the consequences. I pulled the manila folder from the counter and slid it across the table to her. Inside were the divorce papers, the proof of her infidelity, and a letter from my lawyer detailing the terms of our separation. Claire flipped through the documents, her hands trembling. You can't do this, she said, her voice breaking. What about the kids? What about us? There is no us, I said coldly. Not anymore. And as for the kids, I'll fight for full custody. You can have your weekends, but that's it. You don't get to play the role of perfect mom when you've spent the last 6 months destroying this family. Claire sobbed, but I refused to let her tears sway me. She had made her choices, and now she would live with the fallout. What about the house? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It's being sold, I said. I've already started the process. Don't worry, you'll get your share, minus the money you siphoned off for your little trysts. She flinched, as though I had slapped her. Good. She needed to feel the sting of her actions. I still love you, she said, her voice cracking. I made a mistake, but I love you. Can't we fix this? No, I said, my tone final. This isn't something you come back from. You killed our marriage, Claire. Now you have to live with that. She stared at me, her eyes red and swollen, as though trying to find some glimmer of hope in my expression. But there was none. I was done. Sign the papers, I said, pointing to the line where her signature was required. Let's not drag this out. For a moment, I thought she might refuse. But then, with shaking hands, she picked up the pen and signed her name. It was over. I stood, taking the folder and turning toward the door. You'll hear from my lawyer about the next steps, I said without looking back. As I walked out of the house, the cool evening air hit me like a wave of freedom. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Claire had betrayed me in the worst way, but I had taken back control. She had tried to break me, but I wasn't broken. Not by a long shot. The weeks after the confrontation passed in a blur. Claire moved out of the house within days, taking only what she could fit in her car. She looked hollow, like a shadow of the woman I had once loved. But I didn't let myself feel sorry for her. She had made her choices. This was the life she had built with her lies, and now she had to live in it. The kids struggled to understand. Emma, our oldest, stopped talking to Claire altogether. She spent hours in her room, her tears muffled by pillows. Daniel, our youngest, acted out at school, picking fights and refusing to do his homework. I tried my best to hold it together for them, to be the steady presence they needed, but the cracks in our family were too deep to mend quickly. The house sold faster than I expected. It was a good deal on paper, but every corner of it felt like a mausoleum of memories I wanted to forget. The laughter in the kitchen, the Christmas mornings in the living room, the shared glances during quiet nights, every inch of that house reminded me of the life I thought I had. And now, it was someone else's future. By the time we moved into a smaller place across town, the divorce was finalized. The court granted me full custody of the kids, with Claire getting supervised visitation every other weekend. She didn't fight it. If anything, she seemed relieved. That should have made me feel triumphant, but instead, it left an ache in my chest I couldn't shake. I told myself I had done the right thing, that this was justice. Claire deserved everything that came her way. And yet, as the days turned into weeks, I couldn't help but feel the weight of it all pressing down on me. Revenge had seemed so satisfying in the moment, but now it felt hollow, like an echo in an empty room. One Friday evening, weeks after the divorce was finalized, I received a call from Claire. It was late, and I hesitated before answering. I hadn't spoken to her outside of necessary arrangements for the kids since the confrontation. Her name on the screen sent a chill down my spine. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. There was silence on the other end, broken only by the sound of her breath. When she finally spoke, her voice was small, fragile. I wanted to hear your voice." "Claire, it's late," I said, already regretting picking up. "If this isn't about the kids." "Mark, wait," she interrupted, her tone desperate. "Please. I need to say something." I sighed, leaning against the kitchen counter. "What is it?" "I know I've ruined everything," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I'll never ask for it. But I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. Even when I was with him, I thought about you. I thought about us." I closed my eyes, her words cutting deeper than I expected. "Claire. Please, just let me finish," she said. "I know it's too late to fix this, but I want you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. I was stupid, selfish, and I've lost everything because of it. But losing you, it's the worst thing I've ever done." Her words hung in the air, heavy and raw. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to lash out, to remind her of every lie, every betrayal. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the good times, felt a pang of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in months: grief. "Claire," I said finally, my voice softening despite myself. "I don't know what you want me to say. What's done is done. We can't go back." "I know," she whispered. I needed you to know. That's all. Goodbye, Mark." The call ended before I could respond. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty kitchen, her voice echoing in my head. The next morning, a knock on the door jolted me awake. It was a police officer, his expression somber. "Mr. Johnson?" he asked. "Yes," I said, a cold dread settling in my stomach. "I'm sorry to inform you," his voice trailed off as he explained what had happened. Claire's car had been found at the edge of a wooded area outside of town. She had driven off the road, colliding with a tree. The impact had been fatal. The words hit me like a freight train. My knees buckled, and I had to grip the doorframe to steady myself. The officer kept talking, but his words blurred into a dull hum. All I could think about was her voice on the phone the night before, the sadness in her tone, the way she had said goodbye. Over the next few days, everything unraveled. Claire's death was ruled an accident, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than that. The guilt consumed me, suffocating and relentless. Had I pushed her too far? Had my revenge, my cold indifference, driven her to this? At her funeral, Emma and Daniel clung to me, their tears soaking into my shirt. I stared at the casket, my chest hollow. I thought about all the things I hadn't said, the forgiveness I hadn't given, the love that had curdled into hate. And now, it was too late. In the end, I got everything I thought I wanted, the kids, the house, my freedom. But as I sat alone in our empty living room that night, the silence was deafening. Revenge had felt like justice, but now it felt like a sentence I couldn't escape. I had won the battle, but I had lost so much more.